Davenport Community School Board of Directors to order. Turn that on. And then just right out of the gate, to let everybody know, to participate in open forum virtually, please follow the steps below. Call 1-563-445-5001 and enter conference ID 236572. Identify yourself by stating your name and address, and then I will acknowledge you and allow you 2 minutes to speak. Please keep in mind that board members do not respond to comments made in open forum. And my note to turn the recorder on is done. All right. Director Beck, could I get you to read the board priorities?
Absolutely. If I can get the window to work. There we go. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Kleindrom, could I please get you
the
to read
impacts of poverty on our
mission and
students,
vision
their families,
statements?
and our community.
Yes, the mission statement: enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Kleindrom. Everybody participating on Skype, could I get you to mute until you talk, because we're getting a bunch of reverberation in the boardroom. Student board reports. There will be no student board reports tonight. Are there any board reports?
President Gosa, I do have one thing I'd like to say.
Director Kleindrom, go ahead.
I would like to say hats off to all the teachers out there who put together those videos on a daily basis. It took me an hour and a half and 3 tries to put together and share with a teacher a 6-minute video. So kudos to all of you who put your time into it, because it was driving me nuts, and I was really impressed how many of you do it on a daily basis.
Thank you, Director Kleindrom. Any other board members have board? Director Poston.
I spent part of Friday with Principal Williams at West High, and want to thank her for the time she spent with me. Got to take a little tour and then sit and visit with her for a while and listen to some of her concerns. Again, we have a gym over there at West where with the automotive classes, the welding classes, and again, at some time I would like to sit down with Mike Bondren, and we need to maybe promote this a little bit more over there at West, and there's just a lot of good things going on there and a lot of good faculty.
Thank you, Director Poston. Are there any other board reports from board members? Seeing and hearing none, we will now move on to communications and open forum. I will, to participate in open forum virtually, call 563-445-5001 and enter the conference ID 236572. And please identify yourself by stating your name and address, and that way I can acknowledge you and allow for 2 minutes to speak. Is there any open forum? I'm going to give it a few minutes because I know Mary said she had a few people that called to ask about this. So,
Joe, do you see anybody attempting to jump on? Joe, do you see anybody attempting to jump on?
No, I don't.
is there anyone out there for open forum request? No one's on the line? Thank you. Seeing none, I will move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Madam Vice President,
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Second.
seconded by Director Postian. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will now call for the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I get a motion on the approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Postian.
following resolution is recommended by the administration for adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods 1/7/21 to 1/20/21. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of 1/7/21 to 1/20/21.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Are there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. I think I'm gonna go back to open forum just to make sure.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm gonna jump back to open forum to make sure no one's out there that wanted to get on open forum, because I know we did have several people call interested in that. So, is there anyone out there wishing to participate in open forum? Is there anyone that wishes to participate in open forum? While I wait, I will read the open forum statement. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. And again, I will read, to participate in open forum virtually, please call 563-445-5001 and enter conference code 236572. Identify yourself by stating your name and address. I will acknowledge you and allow you 2 minutes to speak. Please keep in mind, the board members do not respond to the comments made in open forum. Is there anyone out there wishing to speak for open forum? Seeing none, I will move on to the superintendent report.
Thank you. I would like to give a brief report ahead of the governor's announcement. We have reconvened our return to learn teams in anticipation that the Davenport schools will require 100% face-to-face option for our families. Those are the same teams that many of you participated on, and you probably are meeting with those teams right now that we pulled together in June. And we're revisiting those plans: the health and safety team, infrastructure team, academic standards, and equity. Surveys are being sent out to families, staff members this week, and students to gather information about returning to school. This piece of legislation is moving very quickly, and we will be needed to respond very quickly. I think the big piece of information that our families need to know is that we will be, when this legislation passes, we will be offering a face-to-face option and a virtual option. The hybrid piece will be very difficult for us to offer as well. It would be too difficult to maintain for our teachers. So right now, we are ready to move when this bill passes and begin to roll out the communication plan with our families. I would like to offer any questions that anybody has about that, but we're still moving forward and developing inside of those plans and gathering information from our families. But just know that we will be ready to offer 100% face-to-face option for our families when this passes. And we spoke with our legislators on Friday, and they have a good degree of confidence that this will pass. So being prepared is the right thing for us to do at this time.
TJ, I have a question about this. This is Karen. With the retirements that have come through in the teachers, are we going to have a class size issue, and are we capping class sizes so that we don't create a huge problem for any particular area?
So to address those issues, our administrative team, Jamie Weinzroll, Rob, and Bill, they met and they looked at potentially moving staff members. While that is painful, it allows us to address the issues that you've just questioned. And so that plan is ready to roll out at the semester.
Are you looking at a cap in terms of how many you will allow in a class?
At this time, I believe we're still sticking with the caps that were set at the beginning of the year, but I can get you an answer to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President or TJ?
Go ahead, Director Snyder.
If we have everything in place and ready to go, will we be rolling this out necessarily before it's mandated by the governor?
That is an option for us if we are prepared. As fast as this is moving, I think that it will be potentially before the semester ends. And so discussing with our leadership team today, that would be the best break for a lot of our students, is to have it happen on that at that time frame. But potentially, yes, this could happen before the semester.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Director Beck, go ahead.
Actually, I have two questions. So with this, if this does pass, is there funding in it to allow for extra mitigation, such as plexiglass shields to put at desks and things like that? Because I suspect with the number of students who would potentially be in our classrooms, we would not necessarily be able to maintain social distancing, but perhaps we can. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, there was a second rollout of ESSER dollars for that exact reason. And so you're absolutely right. When we do return 100%, that we will not be able to maintain the 6 foot in many of our classrooms. So those improving mitigation strategies, just like you spoke of, will be even more important.
Thank you. My other question has to do with another bill that's coming out of the legislature. If you're going to speak about it later, I'll just hold off for now.
You can go ahead and ask your question, Director Beck.
I guess my question is, what is happening with SB 1065, which is a large bill put forth by the governor that covers a lot of different aspects of education, but seems as if it would be particularly have particularly strong negative impact on our public schools. So I just like to know what the district has done so far to discuss this with our state.
Sure, and thank you for asking that question. One of the issues that there's several issues in there that could be concerning to Davenport Community School District. The first one is the diversity bill, the diversity plan, and that has the potential to have a negative impact on Davenport Community Schools, which would allow people to live inside of Davenport Community School District and open and roll out. We have been meeting. We've scheduled meetings with our local business leaders to talk about the impact. We've discussed the impact with the chamber. Most recently, we invited all of our legislators. We invited some of our legislators to come and discuss the potential impacts of this. Board President Goza and Director Postian were there to represent the board. We had a member of the chamber. We had 2 alder people in attendance, and we had members of the city. Sarah Ott, Corey Spiegel were there, and the conversation was facilitated by Tom Lane. And we had an opportunity. We delivered some facts about programming that we have that could potentially be impacted if that bill does go through. I will have to tell you, it was a wonderful conversation between our legislators that really started. What bloomed out of it was a potential advocacy for Davenport Community School District, and I can see that moving forward. What we are seeing from the Capitol is that this is going to pass as well. There's overwhelming support for the passing of I think it's 1065. Is that what you said, Dr. Beck? So where we are is we are planning to move forward with what are the impacts, and then to use that word mitigate, what's the best way that we can do that? There's lots of conversation to be had about that, but there are some potential impact to Davenport Community Schools coming out of that bill. I would urge anybody that's listening, board members, administration, to read it. There is a spot to add comments. And right now your legislators really want to hear from you. And those bills are moving fast as well. So for you to give your feedback to your locally elected officials would be very valuable to them. I had a conversation. Also had a conversation on the phone with Robbie Smith, Senator Smith, about that issue. He did take enough time, about an hour's worth of time, to talk through some of the pros and cons for the things that are on there. So we've been dialoguing back and forth quite a bit with our legislators. But that's where that sits now, and I appreciate you asking that question.
Mr. President and TJ, I have one more question.
Director Snyder, go ahead.
And I don't know if you would rather me put this as a board request. If so, I can. But I'd like to see some type of posted update for our families as to where we're at, what obstacles we're facing, so on and so forth in regards to the severe substitute shortage, et cetera, for the 100% returning face-to-face. Because I do know of a number of families who are concerned that their kids just aren't thriving as they should in the setting that they're in. And I would just like everybody to know where we're at and that we are working on it, and we're not just sitting and waiting for the governor to pass it and until we move forward.
I think putting that in a board request would be very helpful for me and the administration to gather those thoughts, to potentially put that into a systemic request, which is what I think you're asking for. So that would be very helpful to me, Director Snyder.
I will do that.
Linda, turn on your mic.
I was just getting ready to call on her.
Okay, thank you. TJ, you had mentioned that face-to-face could be potentially the end of the semester. When exactly is the end of the semester?
February 11th, I believe. Well, the difficulty for us is that we have a couple of levels, and I don't know right off the top of my head, but February 11th, I believe, is for the elementary, and then it's the set for the high schools. It's a little bit later, but I can send those to you.
No, it's just, I was just wanting to know, make sure it's a soon date. So, those that are listening know that it could potentially come in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, absolutely. When you read the bill that's before the governor, when it's signed and goes into action, you have a couple of weeks to get everything in place. So you're
Thank you.
absolutely right.
Did you have anything else, Superintendent Schnackloff?
No, that finishes my report.
All right, move on to committee reports. Just so the board knows, we decided to put committee reports in here so the committees could report back rather than doing it during board reports. First up, we'll do the Finance Committee update. And Gary Sinclair, are you on?
I am. I couldn't find the mute, undo the mute. I'm sorry. I am here.
All right, no problem. Are you ready for the Finance
I
Committee
am.
update?
I will share the screen, and what the Finance Committee went over the reports that I said we would present each month. I want to start by reminding the board of what they should be looking for every month. Not only does this come from what I've shared with you, but I believe when ISB visited with you, we want to look at our key measures, our unspent balance, our solvency, our cash, and our certified budget. And you really need to think about, where are we this month? How does that compare to prior years? And where do we expect to end the year? So on the screen, you should see what's called the key measures report. The first section that we look at is unspent balance. You can see that we have the historical unspent balance right here. And based on the budget that we submitted originally at the year, we thought we would end at about $7,207,000. Now, note that we still have the original spending level in. We submitted the updated budget over Christmas, and actually we got notice that it was updated on Friday. Since this was submitted to the Finance Committee, it's the same one. The new budget will actually show that we're projecting about 191 million. Understand that most of the savings that we have planned for this year really starts second semester. Our early retirement, not replacing staff, the copiers, the computer insurance, all of those are second semester. But this does show that we're going to end between 6 and 7 million. Actually, I think when we get the new budget in, we'll be a bit higher. Now, this includes all of the SBRC items. It includes everything in the budget. Now, there's, I think when we visited a few months ago, we kind of received the impression that they wouldn't consider the special ed deficit. And really what it's come down to is that Iowa law requires you to be positive without considering the special ed deficit. But we have learned that the SBRC will in fact consider the special ed deficit to determine whether you have to have a workout plan and a peer like we have in the past. Last month, there were 2 Iowa schools that ended the year negative. When they added in their special ed deficit, they were positive, so they didn't have to have a workout plan, didn't have to appear. Now, that is the SBRC may consider it, so our continued target is to be positive according to the law without considering the special ed deficit. We can see here that our projected unspent balance by year end is about 3 to 4%. And again, I think we're going to be more positive with the savings second semester. I would expect us to end the year closer to 5. And if there's questions, please stop, or I'll take them at the end. This line looks at the percent of our budget that we have spent. We have spent 43% of the budget, 42% of what's projected. Now, projected, remember, it means actuals July through December, plus projected January through June. And you can see that's a little lower than we would have been the prior years. Solvency, you can see this is our solvency trend here. We are projecting that to stay pretty constant by year end. As far as year to date, we have received 43% of our projected revenue, which is exactly where we have been in prior years. Down, looking at certified budget, last month we pointed out there was an issue in the non-instruction, that there was some not included from the original certified budget. One of the board members asked if that was possible for the support services because it was also low. I indicated at that time that I didn't think so, but I would check. And it was a very good catch by the board member because it was. Now, in yellow is actually what was certified last April with the public. What you will be asking to recertify sometime in the next 2 months are these numbers. These are new certification numbers. So we're going to recertify the budget. Doesn't affect taxes, doesn't affect revenue or spending. It just updates the material, takes out the error that was made, and shows what we project to be able to spend. Remember, this includes all funds. This is the key measure report. Are there any questions about it before I go on? Okay, hearing none. The next one, as I've said before, boards tend to relate to this one a little better because this really looks at revenue versus expenditures. This is through December of 20. This looks at local, state, federal, and other revenue. It shows what we have received year to date for local, for state, for federal, and overall. Federal, because of COVID and other issues, we have received a higher percentage, and obviously a lot more. So that's our revenue to date. Nothing particularly surprising or alarming. We're on target. This would indicate that we've not misstated the budget for revenues. Through December on expenditures, we break it down into salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, property, and other. We're running a little lower than I would expect for salaries. Now, I think when we amend or change the budget, that will be a little bit higher, but not a lot. That's good news, that we're running a little lower than projected for salaries and benefits. Purchase services are on target. Supplies and materials are running kind of at the high end. But a lot of that, I've looked back, has to do with COVID-related expenditures. Overall, we're at 42% of our budget, which is slightly lower than we have been in the past during the same time period. We actually had a surplus overspending, revenue overspending for this month. You can see in the past months, most months, January spends more than it takes in. Probably the most important is to look at where we think we will be year end. We think we'll have a significant amount of cash build up, which we put on a lot more cash this year in property taxes. The other funds are included, but as we've talked about before, we don't do a prior year simply because of the magnitude of it. What's important to look at here is where we think we will be year end. And we can see that debt service has had that continually. So that's nothing new. There's no activity. But nutrition is obviously taking a hit from COVID, and we will look at ways to try to help Hot Lunch before the year ends. But the rest of our accounts right now are projected to end positive. This really is a report that looks at revenues versus expenditures, gives you a sense of where you are this month and where you have been in the past. Are there any questions about that?
Gary, this is Karen. I do have a question about what are you projecting will be our savings by having this mid-year retirement?
These are all the savings. The early retirement right now is 1,321,523. Second semester only.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
Gary, this is Linda. You had
Yeah.
mentioned a problem with nutrition. Can you explain that or clarify that a little more for me?
Well, I think as I look at districts across the state, we're having less people eat. We're having less revenue from that side. A la carte, those types of things are typically down in schools. I don't know if TJ or Lisa want to address that specifically. I'm really reflecting what I'm seeing from other schools in hot lunch taking a hit because of a decrease in revenue.
Exactly right, Gary.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, every month I said that we would share an analytic, something about your district, one special ed and one gen ed. What this is, these are the 13 15. I'm sorry. I thought it was 15. I said 13, but 15 largest school districts in Iowa. And what this does, this plots the number of students that are identified in special ed and the percent overall. Now, this is of your total student body. The black line is Davenport. So what this tells us, that Davenport has the highest number of kids identified for special ed of all these schools. That's not bad. That's not good. That is simply where we are. Now, we do want to look at that and see if it changes. We'll have some new numbers here in a couple months. We have Davenport's. We don't have other school districts. Davenport is down drastically again. I don't have it on the agenda tonight, but we're projecting even a larger special ed deficit next year because of revenue. I believe the special ed team is looking at ways to reduce cost. This is part of the picture that tells you about your district compared to others. Any questions about this?
Gary, this
Yes.
is Allison.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, and I'm kind of trying to think like a parent here if I were listening in. One of the things about special education is that students on IEPs it's individualized, so they have services that they need that we must provide. So I guess my question would be about trying to find cost savings when it seems like they're necessary expenses and we don't have a lot of flexibility there. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes, that's a great point. In my 30 years as a superintendent, quite frankly, I could never get the deficit managed. And it's because of what you say that much of it is driven by the IEP. But I think where we need to look is that we are down the last 2 years a significant number of students and a significant amount of weighting. Each student is weighted based on their needs. Lower needs, lower weighting, higher needs, higher weighting. So I think where we are going to try to look is that as we reduce the number of students that are served, and as the weightedness is reduced, can we find some savings? And then just like anything is looking at ways of doing things that are more cost effective.
Thank you.
We also have Bill Decker in the room with us too. Also, and Sandy's online as well if Sandy would like to talk. But while you're trying to figure out how to get on, Sandy, Bill, would you mind speaking to that?
And I don't want to take any comments that Sandy might be going to make, but there is a financial side of this, and that's what Gary's reporting, and that is perfectly logical, and I don't disagree with any comment that Gary just made. There is the other side of this equation, in which, as Allison said, any student that does have a disability and can be accommodated, that needs to be done. But when you start to look at percentages, you have to look and say, why is a particular population different than another one? And if you're talking about a small group of students, the differentiation can be great, but the larger the group of students is, the more it should start to fall into a range that would be similar. And so what we want to do is we want to work as a district and an AEA working together to make sure that the issue isn't some sort of instructional change that can be made. If we can be more effective in the regular classroom, then we will have less students that maybe exhibit those kinds of needs. And it's not something that should be viewed as oppositional.
Exhibit those kinds of needs, and it's not something that should be viewed as oppositional.
I'm just supposed to talk through that. We should be working hand in hand. If we're doing a great job in the general ed classroom, then we should be able to work in minimizing that percentage a little bit, regardless of the finances involved.
Is that Sandy's phone?
TJ?
Go ahead, Sandy.
I just wanted to add that in addition to, if the board recalls several months ago when we did the presentation on special education, we had kids that were receiving services at a higher weighting than perhaps what they needed. And so we've been getting that all in where it needs to be. Also, we had a higher proportionate number of kids who were African American in special education, but through our MTSS work that we'll be doing, building the amount of accommodations and supports that are in general education for students, special education will not automatically be the solution for some kids. And so our numbers will also go down that way, meaning we'll have the right kids getting the right services. So until all of this systems changes equal out, so to speak, we're probably going to be looking at fewer kids and fewer dollars due to weightings, if that makes sense.
Sandy, then are you also talking about right sizing the staff that's teaching? If you've got fewer kids, fewer dollars, wouldn't that also translate to fewer teachers in those areas?
I think that's one thing that we're going to be keeping a very close eye on, as far as making sure that we have the right number of teachers per level of service. Also, the number of paras that we need. We've been very generous in the past with our para support, which is great when you can afford it. And so we've really had a model in the past that I'm not sure we can afford in the future, as far as having very low caseloads, high numbers of paras, and so we'll be taking a very close look at that. Another thing is the stipend for special education teachers. We'll be doing some research as far as what other districts are doing, and making sure that we, if there's some cost that can be recovered there, that might be another area.
The good thing is that under the law, special education is not going to negatively impact our unspent balance, because when you have a deficit, you're able to get additional authority from the SBRC. Where it will start to impact us is in the property tax, is that deficit dollars will eventually draw down the reserve we have, and we'll have to put on more cash.
And Gary, if I could just jump in, and then I'll be quiet. Of course, you're absolutely right that, there are options for special education when it carries a deficit. I'm just going to be working really diligently with the district to make sure that our deficit is reasonable. Just because we can overspend doesn't mean we should. And so if we've got needs of some of our children that require us to overspend, I would not hesitate for a moment. But it's making sure that we are reasonable as a system as far as what sort of deficit that we have.
Mr. Decker, did you have anything else you wanted to add? I know you it was getting echoey there.
Well, I just think what Sandy just said is exactly, I kind of thought some of my comments, and if she were going to speak, they might intersect. But, I think there's no one in the Davenport district, there's no one at the AEA, and I would include the board in that doesn't want students to get the services that they need. But a lot of times we need to make sure that we're not giving students services that exclude them from a general population. And so I have full confidence of our team, our Sandy and the Davenport team, as well as working with the AEA to get those issues that Sandy was speaking to figured out.
Thank you, Bill. Did anyone have any other questions for Gary or anyone else before Gary moves on?
Okay, my last chart is really what the board asked for last month. Now, what you received or what's in the board packet is not sorted properly. I sent a new one tonight to Mary and Lisa and Brenda, and you will get it. But what we're looking at here is correct. This is district-wide staff. I wish I could say that the software sorted it improperly, but I'm pretty sure it was user error. What you're seeing here is correct. And really what we did, and I did this with Lisa and TJ, we tried to go through all of the districts, and we chose these districts that are on the left here. I believe there are 8. And we tried to identify through the district's data all the positions that would be called district-wide staff, not just administration, but district-wide staff. What this chart does is to identify the number of district-wide staff. You can see the average is 163, and Davenport is probably closer to 240. Now, again, there's going to be some variance because people identify employees with different titles. But we did as much as we could to try to identify the broad scope of district-wide. So this identifies that of these 8 schools, Davenport has more. The second one looks at it. The first one is right on the chart you would receive. This is the one that's different. It kept the order of the schools, but it didn't sort them here correctly. This is sorted correctly. And what this shows that on average, there's 88.8 district-wide employee or students per employee. Davenport is closer to 65 to 70. So you have a lower number of students per employee. Now, does that mean you have too many district-wide employees? That's not what this directly says, but it certainly means it's something we've got to look at. And I think the reorganization you're going through is part of that process. The last chart looks at average salary for those positions. And the average salary for district-wide employees is $50,456. Davenport would be slightly under that at about 50,000. So these three charts, and again, there'll be a new one posted when they can get that done if you want to look at it in more detail, tells you how many district-wide staff, how many students per district-wide staff, and the average salary of district-wide staff. Just looking at the raw data, it looks like too many. And that's something that you're going to have to consider. And there may be reasons for it. Every district is unique. Every district is different. That's part of what you have to look at in your review. These are the two analytics. Any questions about those?
Gary, this is Allison. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I switched to headphones, so I wasn't sure if they were working. So with the salaries there, I know in the past and traditionally, many of our district-wide staff have received an annuity as part of their contract. Is that part of your calculation in terms of average salary?
No.
Do you happen to know how much more it would be if you included that?
I don't, and I don't know. I will look into it, Allison, to see if I can figure that out. The problem is I don't know how many other districts pay the annuity. So I know for Davenport, and I could figure a total. I mean, I could get an average for Davenport. And I can do that. I just don't know that I'm able to get that from other districts. It's reported as a benefit, so it gets rolled in. So I really can't separate that in most districts. Davenport I can because I have the specific data. I will look into that to see what I can find.
Thank you.
Anything else? In closing, I would just like to say we've made great progress. We are working daily with staff trying to find ways to save money, trying to find places to best serve kids and still reduce cost where we can. So I think we're going to end the year positively. And the legislation, when it passes, we'll have to have an extended discussion first with the Finance Committee and then with the board, is how do we plan for that? How do we deal with that? And what's the finance impact? So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gary. Director Poshin or Director Kleindrom, you were both on the Finance Committee. Did you have anything you wanted to add for committee report? Director Poshin.
Well, again, we talked about it at the Finance Committee meeting. Gary keeps bringing up, the key measures so that we know where we've been, we know where we're at, and then what our projections are. So again, as board members, we need to keep looking at those key measures, and it just tells us our financial story for us then.
Director Kleindrom, did you have anything you wanted to add?
It is a positive feeling to sit there though and see, I feel that we are going in the right direction. Which a few months ago I shook my head, but I do feel like we're getting on the right track and where we need to be. So I really appreciate all of Gary's help and information.
Thank you. Superintendent Schneckloff, I'm sure you have something you wanted to tell us on that.
Well, I think it's important to know what else the Finance Committee team was doing. We spent a good chunk of time reviewing a negotiation tool that is going to provide a level of transparency between the different bargaining groups. And I know Director Klein Jerome had talked about her perspective on being a part of bargaining in Davenport for so long. And I was very proud of the work that was done inside the finance committee, because the type of work that was done inside of there is improves transparency, and it will allow for what I think to be really good negotiations moving forward. The second thing we discussed is we are moving forward with the CFO candidate. February 15th is our candidate's first day. And we discussed Gary, who has graciously, unless he has changed his mind, will continue to work with our district while our CFO is taking the lead in onboarding. And I have to say, Bill Decker set those interviews up in the month of November and really has done an outstanding job to help facilitate that process. And he did an excellent job. Just want to make sure to say thank you, because I know that was above and beyond a lot of hard work. So those are the other two additions that I would like to add to the finance committee that we discussed. The meetings are, and we're talking about finances for 2 hours straight, and it goes by like that. And so I want everybody to remember that we're building a system that will outlast anybody sitting at the table. That's our goal for that. And that group of people serves the board. That's the other piece that I really want to keep in the mind of the entire board and administration, because when I'm sitting in there, it's very easy for us to make decisions, but we know that those decisions need to be made collaboratively with the board. So I'm very optimistic myself with the transparency that's happening inside that board. And Gary Sinclair, thank you so much for bringing your knowledge to that team.
Glad to do that.
I do want to thank Bill Decker and TJ for inviting myself and the finance committee to meet the CFO candidate and sit down and talk and ask questions on that. That's something we've never had before as board members, but it was kind of nice to be part of the process. So again, this was a great candidate. I don't know, we didn't move on it before, but I think we'll hit the ground running February 15th and get things done. And Gary, we appreciate your presentation. With nothing else from the Finance Committee, are there any other committee reports? I didn't know if Allison, if you had anything on policy or anything like that.
Sorry. We are just continuing to move on with our policy manual updates. Tonight we've got the 300 series. I know we're meeting and hoping to get out the 400 series. So it looks like we're kind of on track to make the switch over towards the end of the academic year, which was our original plan. And just a reminder that that we don't have to have every single policy that the IASB suggests. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is a policy necessary or is it extraneous? And we'll have some for discussion tonight. A couple things I'll highlight then. Thanks.
Did any other committees have any reports? So I think TJ talked about it a little bit ago, but we are kind of doing our legislative advocacy committee a little bit different now. And Friday, myself and Director Postian, along with the Superintendent Schneckloff and Bill Decker, Tom Lane, we had Aldermans Rick Dunn and Marion McGinnis, Corey Spiegel with the city. I'm trying to think of everybody else that was in the room. I know Senator Knoyer was in the room with us, Representative Postian, Senator Lofgren, and Representative Moore was on the phone. I think I got everybody.
Yep, that's it.
And it was just a good discussion to have everybody in the room, and we talked about being more collaborative and working together, because at the end of the day, we need to do what's good for our students and our communities, and we need to have more meetings like that. So I know myself and Superintendent Schneckloff had talked about reaching out to our other city municipalities that, you have Buffalo Bluegrass and Walcott, as well as the County Board of Supervisors, You have your Davenport City Council and then all of the state representatives, because at the end of the day, if we're doing something here and they don't know about it, something that they're doing might impact what we're doing. So if we're all on the same page, working for the same goals, those are a lot of tools and resources and a lot of ideas and stuff. So I did use the word collaborate, I think 10 times probably. So I thought it was a pretty good meeting. And Director Pashan, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that or not, but I thought it went very well. They were very receptive, and it sounded like, they wanted to continue working together. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add, Director Pashan.
No, just I feel too, as you do, that it's very important. I mean, ultimately, this is where our money comes from to run the school district, and I mean, not only state dollars but local dollars, and so it's important to stay in contact with our legislators.
Superintendent Schneckloff.
In the interactions that we had, I was really impressed with the level of questions that our legislators were asking. And I was really impressed with the passion that they relayed towards our district. And I think just something to put it out in front of us, they really responded with facts. How much was that? How many students are in there? So the more, when we reestablish our legislative advocacy group, really generating facts, generating numbers that our elected officials can take with them into meetings is going to be very beneficial.
And again, thank Tom Lane for driving all the way down to facilitate that. He did an excellent job. If there are no other committee reports, I will go into items requiring action. Can I get an approval on 901, approval of level 1 and level 2 investigators?
Mr. President,
Vice President Hayes?
I move the board approve the level 1 and level 2 investigators as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein Jerome. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
just to clarify for the public who may not be aware of this, these are named every year. We are legally required, I believe. Ms. Weinzierl can back me up on that and explain it, to have these investigators. And I'm going to turn it over to her because I forgot she was here to explain the type of training and things that these and the jobs that these people have.
Sure. So there's a few things that tie into this requirement, whether it's Title IX and sexual harassment, or it's bullying and harassment as part of our citation. So basically, with the complaint process, a lot of complaints start at the building level. So by pulling all of the administrators, building administrators, into the level 1 investigator role, everyone's trained on the same process and procedure, and we're all following the same guidance. And so every building is doing an investigation the same way. And then when it gets up to the point where it needs to be escalated to an equity complaint, we know that everyone's been using the same process, and then we're also using that process as well. So it touches multiple other board policies, but yes, we are required as well to have that.
Is there any other discussion?
Jamie, could you explain what would constitute it going to that level 2?
So that would go beyond sexual harassment. So if there any other sexually related type situations, has to be handled by an external party. So basically, for like myself or Jabari being the Title IX coordinators, doing the sexual harassment type investigations, but if it gets beyond just harassment, we have to go to level 2 and have an external party do that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. Before I move on to discussion items, I wanted one last time to ask if there was anyone out there for open forum. I wanted to make sure if you logged in late, I got you. I know this is a little different because we're going to virtual tonight, but I just wanted one more time to give someone the opportunity to go to open forum. Again, that number to call in is 563-445-5001, and the conference ID is 236572. And then identify yourself by stating your name and address so that I can acknowledge you, and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
I feel like saying, but wait, if you call right now, we'll double your time.
Well, we could throw that out there. Joe, do we have anybody calling in? Thank you. Seeing none, I will move on to discussion items.
This first one, Lisa, are you on and available to lead this one? I know we have our, I know Sarah's on the line. I saw that.
Yes, I am on the line. And so we have our auditors from Bonzak and Fromelt here tonight. It's Sarah Bonzak, and she will be going over our audit tonight and reviewing that and answering any questions that you might have. Start my camera. Sarah, are you there?
I am, thank you. I'm going to attempt to pull up the presentation on the screen. See if I can get it. Here it comes. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to come tonight to present your June 30th, 2020 audit. I wanted to go over the deliverables that you received. The first one was the comprehensive annual financial report. And there's a few things I wanted to point out in that document. It really is a wealth of information for the year ended June 30th, 2020. If you read nothing else within the report, if you take a look at the management discussion and analysis that starts on page 4, that document gives a 2-year comparative high-level presentation of how the year compared to the prior year, and some other pertinent information about your debt and your capital assets. That's followed by the financial statements, which is followed by the notes. And the notes give you greater detail about your debt within the district, the assets that the district has, as well as your pension plans and your other post-employment benefit plans. And the notes are followed on page 71 by the statistical section. And the statistical section gives you a 10-year trend. So it has financial trends for 10 years, revenue, debt, and also other demographic information such as your full-time equivalents is presented there. And that is followed by the compliance section, which houses the report of the government auditing standards audit and also the federal single audit. So I kind of wanted just to introduce you to that document. And then I'm going to go through a few slides Please feel free to interrupt me if you have questions. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. So with that, the first is the required communications to the board. And we think of this kind of as our report card to you. The audit, as I mentioned earlier, we really do 3 types of audits when we come out to do the district's audit. First, we do the financial statement audit. The financial statement audit, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest form of opinion that a district can receive. We do have an emphasis of a matter, and that is disclosed in Note 15 or page 54 of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And that is discussing the district's plan and their status in regard to the conditional accreditation. The second type of audit that we do is referred to as a government auditing standards audit. And the purpose of that audit is really twofold. One is to look at your internal control system and also to test it to see that it's functioning as it was designed. And the second part of that is to look at your compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and debt agreements. And for the internal control this year, we did issue 2 material weaknesses. One, it was on your year-end adjustments, and the other one was on the preparation of your schedule of federal assistance. And I really think that this year that those weaknesses kind of reflect the fact that you were down 1 position for the year-end accrual conversion process. The second piece is we also issued 2 significant deficiencies. The first one was on your reconciliation process for your school nutrition funding, and the second was on your payroll monitoring process. The district does have plans in place for each of those findings and is currently working on resolving those. Compliance with state laws and regulation, there were some findings in regard to compliance as well. Those are all detailed in the back section of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. That section starts on page 112 of the report. The last type of audit that we do is a federal single audit. And so it's looking at your federal funds. This year, the district expended $16.7 million of federal expenditures. We tested the child nutrition program, which represents $6.3 million of that, and also the ESSER funds, which represented $2.1 million of that. We did have a material weakness over the ESSER funds in regard to your payroll transactions that were charged to the program. Your payroll transactions represented $1.9 million out of the $2.1 million expended for the grant, so it was fairly significant. And really the comment was on the supervisory approval process of those expenditures. We also issued a significant deficiency over the nutrition program, which was similar to the one I referred to earlier on the reconciliation of that program. So that was the results of the audit. And then I was just going to go through a really high level over the government funds revenues and the disbursements. The first graph shows the governmental funds revenues for 2020 compared to 2019. In 2020, the district had revenues of $218.4 million. In 2019, you had $220.8 million. So that's about a $2.4 million decrease in revenues. Property tax, you actually had an increase of $817,000. Your actual assessed value increased 7%, or $322 million. And that was somewhat offset that you actually had a decrease in your property tax rate. So it went from 15.5 to 15.3. Another thing to point out is the other local bar. It decreased 2.2 million. This was due to primarily due to COVID-related revenues. Your student activity fund, for one, decreased approximately 300,000, and in addition, you had some interest decreased of about 500,000. And the last one I wanted to point out on this page is the intergovernmental. It decreased about 930,000, and that was primarily in your federal awards. They decreased from 11.2 million in fiscal year 19 by about 930,000. And with that, I was going to touch on the governmental fund expenditures. Your governmental fund expenditures in 2020, was 206.7 million compared to 2019, which was 217 million. So that's an $11 million decrease in your expenditures between the 2 years. That's primarily reflected in your instruction bar, which decreased 9.6 million. Salaries are your largest component by far in your instructional expenditures. You actually had pay increases of about 2 to 3%, but your instructional full-time equivalents decreased from 1,625 in fiscal year 19 to approximately 1,500 in fiscal year 2020, which accounts for the majority of that decrease. The other bar to point out is the capital outlay decreased about 1.6 million, and this is really dependent on what projects you have going on in any one year. In the current year, your significant projects included Central High School locker room renovation and your North High School field house renovation. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Sarah, this is Karen Klein Jerome, and I have some questions, but not pertaining to that report. Are you going to go over the other reports, or?
I can, or if you want to ask a question, I'm happy to address that.
Okay, and I guess this probably is more geared towards TJ. On the second report, the controlled deficiency letter, there's some concerns here for me as a board member and a finance committee person. We have a certificate of deposit that's 23, 24 years going. We don't update things. We haven't changed the contact information on the finance director. The person on there obviously is already retired. What are we doing to get this? These seem like minor things, but I don't think they really are minor things. How are we addressing this and getting this, or are we waiting until February 15th when our new CFO is here and say, okay, fix this? And I also want to throw this out, I guess, to Dan and maybe Kent. The superintendent's credit card, it's that a board member should be also supervising the transactions, or should be reviewing it. And I would just throw out a suggestion that it either be the board president or the finance committee chair, which at this time would be Kent, or Dan, that you step in to start doing that. But how are we addressing these deficiencies?
Well, Sarah was kind enough to sit down with Lisa and myself after her findings, and we really got an opportunity to dig in deep on what the findings are. You're absolutely right a new CFO should come in and establish some of these things, dig into the process. But one of the biggest deficiencies that we see is our internal controls, and how we approve and how we keep track of. And so the partnership between HR and our finance department and utilizing the software that we already have is going to be a huge step in the right direction. So Lisa and I had a wonderful meeting with Sarah and her colleagues about these deficiencies, and I'm very much looking forward to working with our new CFO. The collaboration between HR, utilizing the software that we have, because I believe that those are some of the major issues that we have, and when we can generate better reports, when we can streamline exactly what's going on inside of our district. So Karen, to answer your question, that's the direction that we're heading, and you're absolutely right. We do need the brunt of this work to happen with our new CFO, partnered with Gary. But that was the gist of our conversation when we sat down with Sarah. Lisa, do you have anything to add to help answer Karen's question?
Sure. I specifically was going to address the issue that you mentioned as far as the CD. I was not aware that those things hadn't happened. And so when Sarah brought that to my attention, I am working on updating that. The CD matures in March. And so working through with our bank, we will update that CD. We'll either close it out or we will sign up a new CD at that point in time. Once we decide what we need to do with it, are the rates good or whatever. So I've taken care of that one, and I will get, as far as the former finance director signature, I will take care of getting that one done as soon as Kevin comes on board. So, and
okay,
again,
and
many of the other items, we have already put things into place to make sure that these things don't happen again.
Okay, yeah, I only touched on a few, but as I read through the list, it seemed quite extensive, and that was kind of a red flag on that. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Director Poston, you had a question?
Karen, I had the same concerns, and my hope is, as the Finance Committee, that shortly after our new CFO is on board, that maybe we can meet with him, not only on these issues, but then talk about our Finance Committee meetings and how we're going to proceed from there.
Did any other board members have any other questions? I pretty much had the same ones and they all got answered. So did anyone have anything else? Do you have more to add to the superintendent? Sarah, did you have any more that you were going to show us? Oh, Director Poston?
I wasn't 100% clear on under nutrition program, item number 2. I was talking about telephone lines being charged, and was that just an entry error, or what was that all about?
Correct. That there was a routine entry that was made to charge them for their portion of the telephone lines. However, at some point in time, the telephone lines no longer existed within the district's cafeterias.
So do we go back and reimburse them for a payment for something that wasn't there?
Yes, an entry was made to correct that.
And this is Lisa. I just wanted to say sometimes what happens, and that happened in this case, is that the phone lines were, if they're disconnected or someone else's, they decide to move the line. If the finance department doesn't know about it, we can't make that correction. So sometimes, as soon as we were made aware of it, we went ahead and we made the correction, and have, talked with operations to get that situation corrected as well.
Director Poston.
Then if that's the case, then we've got to make sure that we've got good communication between operations and finance so these errors don't occur again.
Sarah, did you have more that you wanted to go over with us?
No, other than I'd like to thank Lisa and her team. It is a very comprehensive process, and we were there for several weeks during the fall season. So I do want to thank you for your time and your willingness to dig in with us and resolve anything that we came across.
Did any other board members have any other questions? Well, Sarah and Lisa, thank you for this presentation, and I do look forward to when the new CFO starts that we can start addressing these things and getting them done right away. So looks like we'll be moving in the right direction. With that, we will move on to the year-long calendar. Superintendent Schneckloff.
So one of our goals is to be proactive with our planning of our agendas. And we wanted to present to you a draft calendar for discussion. This is a combination of IESB and things that we see inside of our own district that need discussion. So we just wanted to bring it before the board to see if best way to use it as a part of the agenda committee. We plan on bringing this out and utilizing it every time. We also discussed utilizing a section of it or teasing out for the finance committee. But we wanted to bring it in front of you for a potential discussion item or comments that the agenda committee could then move forward with. Brenda T. had and Mary worked on this over the course of a couple of weeks to gather the information. So again, with this, our goal is this will allow us as board members and administration to be on the same page of what's coming, hold each other accountable to those dates that are on there. And by doing so, it will allow us to have discussions before action items. It will allow us to be preventative and proactive. So with that being said, we'd like to open it up for discussion for possible uses or anything that we're missing, or Gold Star, go forward with it.
I like the fact that the evaluations are listed on there either quarterly or yearly or every 6 months, however, but I appreciate that it's there so that we don't overlook it. So I like that part of it. And I like actually it all laid out the other, we're going to the return to learn, collective bargaining. I think this really gives us a real proactive approach to this.
I have a question for clarification. Sorry, this is Director Beck. When, for example, on April 5th, it says Committee of the Whole, and then it says hold board hearing on budget. would that be the topic of the committee of the whole, or are we looking at sort of two different topics here? Is there something else that we might discuss in that committee of the whole meeting?
Say your question one more time, Allison. I'm sorry.
So I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to read this, because a couple of the meetings seem like, I guess there's a couple things that I don't see on here that I'd like to see on here, and I'm trying to clarify. A couple of the committee of the wholes, when you have the, for example, March 1st, where it says negotiations discussion, that is the topic for the committee of the whole scheduled for that day, correct?
Oh, that's a good point. So I think it can be both. These things need to occur inside of that time frame. So whether or not it's at that committee of the whole before, for example, if we did do a closed session, that might be a good time to do it before a committee of the whole. So more of a time frame, not as a this is exactly what's happening on those meetings kind of a thing. President Goza, did you have something to that?
So basically what we did, we tried to figure out the time frame when certain things need to be done, because obviously, you have contracts have to be done in a certain time frame. So we just wanted to get that out there so that when we're looking at it and setting the agenda, we know, hey, this is coming up, so we need to get a committee of the whole to discuss it so then we can vote on it at a regular board meeting. So we were just trying to kind of get ahead, and plus that way, when certain things are on here, the administrators that are in charge of a particular topic, they know that this is coming up so they can start getting ready ahead of time, so then it's not a last minute thing, and it just keeps it on our radar because there's certain things that need to be voted on at certain times. And then, we'll have certain, I just totally lost my train of thought where I was going. But, like, nope, I lost it. Or like testing scores and where kids are at and that. So then we kind of know the general area where we need to be asking those questions and making sure we're getting that on the agenda. So we just kind of did a blanket thing, and then we'll fill in as things go. But these are main things that we wanted to make sure that we focused on. It kept it in the board's mind when you think about it, and administrators, hey, this is going to be coming up, so I need to get ready for this, and for us as well, so we're not cutting it on deadlines and stuff like that. We're getting things done a little ahead of time, so we have time to talk about it. We're not rushed at the last minute. And then so yeah, basically that was kind of our premise for this.
I think if there are
Okay.
items on here that you do not see, that's a great discussion point. So if you wanted to send those to Linda, Dan, or myself, Mary, it's anybody that's a part of that agenda committee, we'll make sure that they get added to that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for clarifying that. I do really appreciate having everything laid out this way, particularly with those deadlines, because it's really hard to remember exactly when X evaluation and Y negotiation needs to happen when we've got all of these other things going on as well. So I think this is a good start. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Director Potts.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful and long overdue blueprint. I think it gives us, too often, we weren't being able to see the long view down the road to keep steering straight. We were too busy looking right in front of the bumper. And something kept popping up, and this kept popping up, and that kept popping up. And we all had this feeling that, like, why is this stuff all popping out of the toaster? Why didn't we know this was down the road? Why didn't we know that in 2 months we're gonna be talking about this topic, or we need to deal with this topic? I think this is a wonderful roadmap for the year. And I realize too, there's flexibility in here. All we're saying is during this time frame, we're going to discuss this. Doesn't mean that it's going to be at that board meeting or at that committee, the whole meeting. But we now know that in the month of March, A, B, and C are things we got to deal with.
Bill Decker, you had something?
I'd probably just want to expand on what Director Potts was just saying, and in relation to some of TJ's comments, just to put them together. It is definitely a working document. It shouldn't be viewed as something that constrains the board, and the board should consistently feel like if you want to add something that comes up that you know is going to happen, you should talk about it and add it. It's a working document. It's not rigid.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Potts, for your comments as well. Did you have any more you wanted to add, Bruce?
No.
Thank you. Did any other board members have anything else? Again, I want to thank Mary and Brenda for really putting all the effort into doing this. They sat down and, we kind of sat in the room and talked about what we wanted, and they're the ones that put it all to paper. So they did a great job doing this, and I greatly appreciate them. If there is nothing else, I will move on to the next discussion topic, which is policies. Director Beck.
Yes. So tonight, first of all, as I introduced last time we had policies, in your packet there, you have a cover sheet where we went through and basically took all of the IASB policies in their 300 series and tried to find all of the things that matched up using both the audit that we got from the IASB and also just some of our own digging around to see where we had those policies. Now, the vast majority of these are not necessarily mandatory policies. So if you see where it says missing, for example, that is not necessarily a problem. Okay, so for example, policy, let's see, 303.2 is not necessarily a mandatory policy. It's on administrative qualifications, recruitment, and appointment. So those are policies that we need to decide as a board if we need them. We do not want to renumber anything because part of the value in using the IASB system is that any updates that come in, we can automatically figure out where they go because we have the same numbering system. But that being said, we're not necessarily required to have every single policy that they've ever written. We also tried to get them out a little bit sooner this time so that people could take a little bit more time to look at potential changes or what these policies are saying. And I apologize if it still wasn't soon enough. It's hard to get everybody together to go through these. But what we did do this time, and we're going to try and do for future meetings, is share with the board the edited copies of the policies. So for example, if it is a policy that we have to fill in some blanks, we fill in those blanks before we send it to you all. So you can see exactly what we're thinking. Are there questions on sort of that procedure right now or comments before I move on? And I can't see, I'll just let people talk. Okay, so the Series 300 for the IASB deals with administration, and as you can see, it is largely the superintendent, some general policies about administrators, which includes principals and district-wide employees, and some policy implementation, as well as communication channels and succession of authority to the superintendent. I am just going to highlight a couple of things in your board packet for you to take a look at where we have made changes. The primary changes we have made, and I apologize, my page is scrolling very slowly right now, are two. First of all, the superintendent evaluation policy. So this is policy number 302.5, and it is on page 9 of your board packet. And based on discussions that we've had as a board in the past, we tried to come up with a way to word that we are going to require at a minimum at least 2 evaluations per year, but that they can't be done sort of back to back. So for example, you can't hire somebody on July 1st, wait until May 1st to evaluate, and then do it again on June 1st, right? So they need to be spaced out through the year. So that's really what the language there is about. And it certainly doesn't mean that a board can't decide to informally evaluate a superintendent more often, quarterly if that's what they wish. But this is the policy as it stands for a formal evaluation. So that's the first one that I wanted to bring to your attention. And feel free to interrupt if you have questions. The second one is policy number 303.2, which is administrator qualifications, recruitment, and appointment. This is on page 15 of your board packet. And we felt that the way it was written was that the board was doing the hiring of most of the administrators, when we know in practice the board has one employee that they hire directly. It's the superintendent, in our case, 2 employees. And then it's the superintendent's job to hire people, but we approve those hirings, right, in our consent agenda. So we tried to figure out the best way to word it so that it was clear that we as a board are not doing the hiring ourselves, but that we are approving hires upon recommendation of the superintendent. Okay. So the next one that we wanted to bring to you or highlight changes that we thought were important was the policy number 307. So this is the one that IASB calls communication channels. And we actually wrote and modified our own version of this policy just a few months ago. We called it chain of command for complaints or something like that. And we are proposing to change the title to something a little bit more straightforward. Right now we have it listed as complaint procedure, but basically this is our policy that reminds people that if you have an issue in a school, you should address the teacher first. And if you don't get it resolved, then you need to go to the principal. If it's still not resolved, then you work your way up the chain. And that is, again, that's a policy we've had in place and that we rewrote recently, but it falls under this section of IASB numbers. So I think that is what I wanted to highlight. If there's anything that Director Snyder or Director Gosa would like to add to that, they may go ahead.
I would just like to thank Director Beck for doing the cover letter and all that and going above and beyond, and also Mary for hustling and trying to get through these so we can get them all done. So it's been a lot of work, so we greatly appreciate all that extra time and effort on that.
All right. Director Snyder, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you pretty well covered it. A lot of them is just the wording. We didn't change much of anything. As you said, the whole idea is to use their numbering system, so when updates are done, we automatically know exactly which policy it is that's updating. Just to keep it simple. We pay a lot of money for those IASB fees, and part of that is access to that policy manual, and I think it's a long time coming that we utilize it.
Thank you. Anyone else? And remember, we will be bringing these before you again. So if you find something that you have a question about, just let us know, and we can discuss it as a policy committee. We are meeting again Wednesday, and I think we're going to be meeting essentially weekly for a little bit here. So, yep, that's it.
All right. Whoop. I better turn my microphone on so you can hear me. All right, so we will move on to board request. Since some of you are virtually, if you have a board request, please state it, and then make sure you get a blank board request form from Mary, fill it out, and email it to her so we have it on record. Are there any board requests?
President Gosa,
Director Snyder.
I have two of them. The first one, I kind of made an informal request a while back to Mary, so I want to make a formal board request here since this is the next meeting where I could do it. This would be an agenda item. I would like to invite Jen Best and her team to present the outstanding work they did with their family learning guides that are focused on social and emotional learning. They did an outstanding job with those, and I would love for them to come present them to the board and just talk about them. Spent a lot of time on those, and they are very, very well done. Just whenever you can fit it in. And I guess as reason why, I guess I kind of already said the reason why. My next one is...
Hold on. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
All right. Make sure you get that filled out, Director Snyder, and emailed to Mary, and you can proceed with your next one.
All right. The next one is, as I was discussing with TJ earlier, this would be more of an information request. I would just like to see some type of a regularly updated posting, maybe on the student portal or something that parents have access to, as to where we're at with our return to learn full time, what obstacles as a district we face. A lot of parents think we can just flip a switch and boom, go back to school, but there's so many things. We got to have teachers in the buildings. We have to have food to feed them. We have to have transportation routes set up. We have to make sure Durham has enough bus drivers. There's a lot of things to put in place. We have to move some teachers around to fill the gaps, as they were talking about earlier. There's a lot of steps involved, as there were to move away from in-class learning. So I would just like, so everybody understands where we're at as a district, to kind of to know, because I've heard from a lot of people who really want their kids back in school, and I completely understand that. And I think it would be helpful to have that kind of a posting and information update. And that's it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Again, make sure you write those down word for word, what you said, Director Snyder, and get that emailed in to Mary so we have it.
Will do.
Are there any other board requests?
Mr. President,
Vice President Hayes?
I would like to, for an agenda item, to have the Lincoln Resource Center do a presentation so the board is aware of what's going on with the building now. And I would like that presentation maybe on the February 22nd meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Same thing for you, Vice President Hayes. Make sure you get that request form filled out and emailed to Mary. If you don't, I'll be in big trouble. Are there any other board requests?
I do not have a request, but I want to know, I thought Linda made a request that we were going to discuss snow days and whether they could be done virtually versus actually having a snow day. And I'm not calling a snow day, so anybody who's listening, do not think I'm saying tomorrow's a snow day. But it seemed like it would have been very timely to discuss this and decide how we are going to handle the snow days. Was that not put in last time?
That was put in, but we haven't met since we put it in.
Yeah,
We
our
were meeting
agenda committee
tomorrow.
meeting was going to be today, but we had to move it to tomorrow. So then we will get it on the agenda because we only meet before the committee of the whole and then the second regular board meeting to plan. So we're only planning 2 meetings at a time.
Okay.
Superintendent Schneckloff.
Just to give you an update on that, Karen, we put together a team that looked into the pros and cons of that, so we are prepared for a discussion. I also believe that that has been discussed with our union reps as well that go across the different bargaining groups. If that hasn't happened, I know Jamie is, because that affects quite a few people, of quite a few groups. So we are prepared for a discussion. We did put a team together. So just, and you're right, it is very timely. And I did hear that Director Klein Jerome called tomorrow a snow day. I thought
I did not. I would be the last person to ever call a snow day, just for the record. But there is a lot of chatter on Facebook about should there be, shouldn't there be, how it should be rolled out. So I just would like it addressed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there any other board requests? Now, before I adjourn the meeting, I wanted to go around and ask board members for your reflections on this meeting and your key takeaways. I forgot to do this at the last regular meeting, so I wanted to make sure I was on top of it this go around. And since Director Poshin is in the room with me, I'm going to call on him first.
Well, as far as the key takeaway for me, every meeting, it's going to be the financials. And again, we can't just focus entirely on that, but that's going to be my number one focus all the time. And then the other issue, I had the same concerns that Karen did on some of the audit reports, and it sounds like some of that's already been addressed. But I do want to dive in deeper on that once our CFO is on board.
Director Beck, I can see you on my screen, so I'll go for you next.
Okay. I knew this was coming and I didn't write anything down. I think it was, I think one of the 2 takeaways was Gary Sinclair's discussion of where we stand on district-wide staff relative to some of the other districts and in terms of our key measures for finance right now. So those were 2 things that I took away in terms of making database decisions on how many people we need in the district, and I believe the term is right sizing. So that was really important. The other thing I was happy to hear is that our administration is already speaking with or in communication with our state legislators, not just from the immediate area, but from all of the areas that overlap with our district. Because I think that's really important considering some of the legislation that's been proposed.
Director Snyder.
Yeah, I've got a few of them I wrote down. One, I think it's hugely important, if that's a word. It's not really a word, but I'm going to say it anyway, that we have a CFO that's starting in a couple weeks. That's a big deal for us. We have been basically, with our financial reports, we are heading in the right direction, and we have that affirmation from Gary. Um, as a district, they have reassembled the return to learn teams and are working on that to get our kids back in our classrooms and get those obstacles behind us. And that's what I had written down.
Thank you. Director Klein Jerome?
I also appreciated Gary sharing with us the comparison with other Iowa school districts, both the district-wide staffing, the students per FTE, and the salaries. I found that to be interesting. I also appreciated the discussion on special ed deficit. 100%, I want the special ed students to get what they need. And not to worry about spending, but I also want to make sure that we're doing it in a right size way as our staffing, our supplementals, our weighting. We have to consider all of those things. So, yes, they need to be, their needs addressed, but we also need to look, are we doing the smart thing in that department as well?
Thank you. Director Hayes?
I guess I'm always excited to hear Gary's information and his reports as to where we are in the district. It was nice to see the comparison with the other districts that are the same size as our district. Also, the superintendent's report with the state of our district and where we're going, and not necessarily waiting for the governor to give the go-ahead to go, but getting ahead of the ball and just getting kind of ready and prepared. So whenever, that time arrives, that our children are prepared for. They've been out a long time. And when everyone's back, I think that's going to be quite the adjustment for everybody going back. So I'm just thankful that they've started working on it right now so everyone's prepared.
Thank you. Director Potts?
Well, once again, Gary's financial report is always enlightening. I am enamored by the fact that we're looking at an unspent balance that could be in the millions. That's earth-shattering. Second, the long-range board plan for the year so that we can anticipate what's coming up. I think that's a really, really important thing that we may not understand or appreciate right now when we first look at it. But as we move ahead in the next year, we're going to find that to be a tremendously effective tool for us to keep on top of things. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I had my microphone off again. It always sucks going last because everybody says what you wanted to say, but the special ed stuff, that was very informative. We definitely got to make sure our kids are getting their needs met. And another big takeaway for me is the involvement of the board. Like our finance committee, they're spending 2-3 hours in meetings. Everybody's invested, asking questions at meetings, because that was one of my biggest things when Harry and I had talked about, to get the board members more engaged in the meetings, asking it, and it's just coming around. So it's nice to see we're moving in the right direction. We have a CFO now. That's good to hear. And then, we were even invited to meet and kind of interview the person, which is something that hasn't happened. So, we're moving in the right direction. We're getting a lot more involvement. Board members are able, to take away things from the meetings, and we can reflect on it and see who got what. With the audit, that threw up some flags for me on some things, but I'm glad to hear that there's a plan in place and that's going to get addressed, when we get a new CFO. Again, these are all new things, that we're getting, but we're on the right path. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Otherwise, oh, you know what? I'm going to call on the superintendent and Bill Decker, and we'll get their thoughts as well. Superintendent Schneckloff.
Well, a big reflection for me in hearing the board members say it is the importance of advocacy. And I would really like to see us make some assignments in that area, because we really do need to advocate for our school district at the Capitol and at the local level. That's extremely important. I heard a couple of times we need to tell our story. Let's get Mike involved. That is a definite next step for us. We have some amazing things that are going on in here, and there can be more than one truth. Yes, we are working on this right now, and we have outstanding programs, teachers, students, staff members in our district. So those two truths can coincide at the same exact time, and that's really important for us to do. And I applaud our board members for going out and being a part of our committees and being inside of our schools. You have no idea what that means to when you ask to be invited to come to a school and you sit down and you talk to the teachers and people inside that building. It goes a really long way. So those are my reflections. Thank you for asking me, by the way.
Mr. Decker.
So I would just first want to start by being complimentary to the board. I believe your takeaways were insightful. I think if Harry were here tonight, he'd be very proud of you. I think if the department was here, they would see progress over maybe what their perception of the board was 6 to 8 months ago. The only real comment that I have about anything is in regard to the audit. As a board, you should definitely expect those audit findings to be checked off and taken care of anytime they come. I mean, anytime you have a finding on an audit, it should be a top priority to take care of. At the same time, when you're talking about a $200 million budget, you're likely going to have a couple of findings, as long as they're not really outside the norm or something that's serious or unethical. You can expect to have a little bit of work to do, and then you have a complete expectation that is just checked off. And I have a lot of confidence that as you move into a new CFO relationship, that stuff will be taken care of and will be easy. But really, aside from that conversation, which had a little bit of negativity to it, I'd want you to minimize that and check it off, make sure the work is done. But besides for that, I thought the board had great insights and really displayed the right attitudes.
Director Poston.
Could I ask a question to TJ? He just brought up about concerning TAG communications.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I'm not sure how we're set up as far as compensation to TAG communications. If it's just a base pay that we compensate them with, and then anything above and beyond that is additional. I'd like to know that. And then can we fit it into our budget that we can use TAG communication to go into, and I know they've done some of this, but go into as many buildings as possible. And just, when we're talking about promoting our schools and that, and I'm just thinking about this because of my visit to West High last week. And there's some things that people need to know about, and especially with some of our CTE courses and that.
Superintendent Schneckloff.
So the contract that we have with TAG, I can get you that so you can see. Mike's listening right now, and he would just be doing a cartwheel if he were here. You would see how ecstatic he is. Just so you know, he is really pushing us to do exactly what you just said. And so we discussed with every administrator in the district, what is the system for getting the good information to TAG. And so we had a great conversation with all of our administrators last Friday about this same exact topic. And we have a process in place, but it's kind of fallen down a little bit. And so we're kicking that back up. We're reviewing it and getting the information to TAG so we can begin to tell that story. And they have the internal ability to handle that for our district. And then how does that flow to the board? To give you an example, Mike was at the legislative advocacy meeting that we had. And one of the things that he decided to do was that when he does have a good story that's going to the news, he's decided to attach our local legislators to that. So then they have that same exact good news story. So those are some of the conversations that we're beginning to have. We also have an email that's directed directly at TAG. But what we have to do internally is we have to attach that to a system. Somewhere along the line, somebody has to be checking on that. And so what we're looking at potentially doing is putting it in a calendar, making certain buildings, as some board members may remember, we had certain buildings that were required to come and do a presentation. So we're looking at different ways to systematize the telling of our story, because that's what we're not doing right now. The stories, the wonderful events and stories and topics are there. We're just not getting it into the hands of TAG. And so I'm going to add that to a potential agenda item to discuss, because I think that would be, may I make a board request for the agenda committee to put that on a topic, because that is absolutely a next step. And we're starting to have that conversation. But what I need from the board is to continue to ask that question, because we need to be held accountable for that. That's something that the board needs and I think is absolutely critical.
We'll discuss that at the agenda committee meeting tomorrow. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Don't everybody at once. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Turn this recorder on. I now call this special call open meeting of the Davenport Community School Board of Directors to order. May I have a motion on items requiring action?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
I move the board offer TJ Snakeloft a contract as superintendent of Davenport Schools under the terms and conditions discussed in the exempt session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Director Hayes?
Yes.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.